Paying people 4.5% or more interest just to not use their money, to not invest it, to keep it on the sidelines, to park it with the government. So there's last time I checked, which was a couple months ago, there was $7 trillion. 7 trillion. That's a ridiculous amount of money sitting in money market funds. That means people have given their money to the bank. The bank has turned around and given that money to the Federal Reserve in exchange for 4.5% interest. And they do that with, T-bills and short-term this, short-term that. But it ultimately accounts for people doing that. Now, it is amazing. Bitcoin is sitting at $108,000 per coin while the government is trying to keep all the money sidelined, which means all of the money that has flown into Bitcoin that has pushed it up to $108,000 per coin, all of that money is competing with the government promising 4.5% interest for you to do nothing. And of course, in government terms, it's zero risk. Obviously, I don't think it's zero risk because there's massive inflation risk and even some default risk. But one second. Anyway, Bitcoin's competing with 4.5% interest rates. Now, when Bitcoin went on a bull run, which means an optimistic run, which means an upswing in 2021, Bitcoin was competing with 0% interest rates, which basically means the government was paying you zero to keep your money on the sidelines. And Bitcoin ran up to $69,000 back in 2021. So a lot of people have made the dumb decision to sit on the sidelines thinking Bitcoin was not going to perform well in a high interest environment. Well, Bitcoin's performed phenomenally well in a high interest rate environment, which is the most hostile environment for Bitcoin to perform in. Because again, Bitcoin is competing with high interest rates that you can get for doing nothing. You don't have to take any risk, according to the government. You don't have to take any risk to get 4.5%, which means you only need to invest in Bitcoin or some other asset if you want more than 4.5%. One second. Okay, so here's what's about to happen. I don't know if this happens tomorrow or a week from now. Here's what's about to happen. What's about to happen is the government's going to lower interest rates. You've got like $7 trillion sitting on the sidelines of people making 4.5% interest, and the government's going to come in and it's going to lower interest rates, meaning it's going to say, hey, just kidding. You can't get 4.5%. You can't even get 3.5%, not even 2.5%. Maybe you get 1%, maybe 2%, maybe a half a percent. But the government is going to radically lower interest rates at some point in the future. Maybe it's the very near future in the coming weeks. Maybe it's in, months. I don't know. But the government is going to lower interest rates because the government has to lower interest rates. The government cannot afford $37 trillion of debt when the interest rates are 4.5%. That's just, it creates trillions of dollars of interest every year, or more than $1 trillion of interest every year, and it's completely unaffordable. Additionally, because of decades of low interest rates on and off, companies and individuals have taken on vast amounts of debt themselves personally. As a result of that, they cannot afford 4.5% interest rates. People who own a home cannot afford to refinance at 7, 8, 9% interest, which is the mortgage interest rates. The mortgage interest rates are always higher than the government interest rate, and same with car loans. Like, the government interest rates, 4.5% to car loans, maybe 6.5 or 7% or something like that. People cannot afford that because the world is drowning in debt. So the government absolutely positively will lower interest rates because they have to lower interest rates. The economy of the United States cannot function with high interest rates because it's drowning in debt, and it got that way by keeping interest rates too low for too long. And once you do that, you basically are stuck doing it in perpetuity into the future, because otherwise all of that debt that's been accumulated is unaffordable, meaning you get forced cascade of defaults, which one thing defaults and then the next thing defaults, and then the people who are counting on that money can't afford their next thing, so that thing defaults, and all of that. So interest rates are going to come down, and as interest rates are going to come down, that $7 trillion sitting in money market funds is going to suddenly wake up. And all those people are going to say, I used to get 4.5% for doing nothing. Now I got to do something. And so that money is going to go hunting for a new home. So a big chunk of it's going to end up in the stock market. A big chunk of it's going to end up in real estate. A big chunk of it's going to end up in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the smallest of those asset classes, meaning, real estate's a very large asset class, bonds, stocks, those are all $100 trillion plus asset classes. So if $1 trillion flows into real estate or bonds or stocks, it really doesn't make that much difference because those are cleared, those are huge asset classes. If $1 trillion flows into Bitcoin, the price radically increases. It has to because Bitcoin is still only $2 trillion and it's very early in its adoption cycle. So my prediction is what's going to happen in the near future. I don't know what near means. Maybe near as weeks, maybe near as months. Is that $7 trillion is going to go looking for a home where it can make an interest rate that is higher than 1 or 2%, which is what is being promised by the powers that be in Washington right now, is that interest rates are going to be low again. And low interest rates means there's not a strong incentive to park your money on the sidelines and just let the government sit on it and give you interest at your bank through money market funds or certificates of deposit. All of those feed off of the government interest rate. And when the government changes their interest rate, it changes all of those interest rates. So a bunch of money is going to come flooding back into the economy, and a bunch of it's going to end up in Bitcoin. And my prediction is Bitcoin goes way, way up from here. It's just a matter of whether it's days, weeks, or months. I don't know, but it feels like that's about to happen. It feels like it's amazing that Bitcoin is sitting at $108,000 when it's competing with the US dollar paying 4.5% interest, even though that's completely not sustainable. And it feels like as soon as that interest rate goes down, Bitcoin's going to go way, way up. It just feels inevitable that that's going to happen again. We got to $69,000 per coin in 2021 temporarily on almost zero interest rates when the money was hunting for somewhere to go. And then interest rates got jacked up to try to, deal with inflation. And then, the price of Bitcoin came down and now it's, back up again, but it's back up when interest rates are high. So Bitcoin's sitting at 108,000 in in a fiscal environment that's not hospitable, meaning in a high interest rate environment where it's competing with high interest rates from other assets. And I just think it's going to go way, way up as soon as Bitcoin's not competing with high interest rates. And, people are looking for a place to put their money. And Bitcoin's by far the best place to do that. So exciting times are ahead. That next big upswing could start in hours, days, weeks. I don't know. It just feels like it's close. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks.